Hey, it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 3 of Mompreneurs, where we celebrate every week beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are simultaneously killing it as amazing business moguls and awesome moms. We're listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, today, my guest is incredible. She is in the business of storytelling, and she is a beautiful storyteller indeed, both inside and out. Natalie Manuel Lee is the fashionista who is instrumental in building Fear of God, the family fashion brand created by her brother. And she's also a television producer, journalist, and wardrobe stylist, and the host of her television series, Now with Natalie, which premiered on the Hillsong channel in March of 2019. Her interviews are just beautiful and evocative, and I'm so happy that she is here with us today. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
Well, I have to laugh because you do interviews all the time. Which
Yep.
side do you prefer to be on? The person asking the question or the person answering them?
You know, it's so interesting because I really do enjoy being on the other side, but I love to have a different perspective on this side. So now I know what my guests feel like. You know what I mean? Often.
I feel like we're the Spider-Man meme with our little snatchbacks.
Yes.
It's like, oh, who's the interviewer? Who's the
Right.
host? Who's the interviewee?
I love it.
Oh my goodness. It's so great to talk to you about your journey and the things that you're working on and how you can inspire other moms. But before we get into your mompreneurship, let's talk about who makes you a mom, who's in your household.
My daughter, May Jones Lee, who is 3.5 years old. When I tell you that is my new boss, that is my new boss. When people say, get ready, get ready. She's amazing. She's in preschool now. She started in January. And so, of course, as a mother and an entrepreneur and a wife, that was definitely a big load off of our shoulders when she started school. But yeah, she's thriving and happy and leading her class.
I love how this is at first, you were saying she's your boss.
My boss, it's so funny. Like sometimes my business partner will be like, is your boss home yet? Not yet. Because usually, and to be honest and frank, when she gets home, I try my best to kind of create boundaries where I just have, undivided attention with her. And so with that, it's like transferring from entrepreneur during the day and then obviously when she gets home from school, mom at night. And so she is my boss when she gets home and I enjoy it. And of course, we know those tables turn often, but yeah,
I love it. Most of us are over here trying to get away from having a boss, and you're just like, well, I'm raising one.
full blown raising one. And my mom is always like, that's what you get. I was like, okay, I know, I'm clear.
That's so sweet. Well, okay, so walk us into how you became an entrepreneur in the first place, because often I ask which comes first, motherhood or entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship came first in your experience, right?
Entrepreneurship definitely came first. She was born in 2020, and I would probably say, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for at least 10 years now. I worked with my brother, as you mentioned earlier, at Fear of God for about 3 years. And then after I transitioned out of that job is when entrepreneurship kind of took the head and the lead in our household. My husband is also an entrepreneur, has his own business as well as myself. And so, yeah, entrepreneurship came first and then obviously motherhood right after. And it's so interesting because you see the nuances and the conflicting emotions when you are an entrepreneur and you're grinding 24/7, but God is a God of order. And I believe that for me, in order for me to be a successful entrepreneur, I have to first be a good wife, be a good mother, and then my entrepreneurship. So technically, entrepreneurship definitely came first, but now that things are back in order, it's wife, motherhood, and then entrepreneurship.
I love it. And it's creating that order is very difficult. So it actually lends to a question I always like to ask about having a hierarchy, right? Like, so
Yeah.
your life hierarchy is wife, mother, entrepreneur.
Yep.
When you look at what your entrepreneurship is, talk to us about, I like to call it the hierarchy of hustles.
Yeah, I love
What
that.
what are the facets of your entrepreneurial endeavors these days?
Yeah, so right now we are back in pre-production for my show. And so, like you mentioned earlier, in 2019, I launched a show with Hillsong Channel, who I'm no longer with. And from there, so after I launched Now with Natalie, uh, had that for 2 seasons, and then May Jones was born. And so after May Jones was born, I took about 7 months off, just to kind of reset, regroup, and really kind of be have letting her have my undivided attention. And then from there, we started my interviews again. And so right now we are in pre-production at the moment, this summer of 2024, and we're looking to launch the show again, fall of 2024 in September. So yeah, right now, and you know how it goes: pre-production, planning,
Oh my
filming,
gosh.
getting the interviews together. So yeah, so building my media outlet as well as working on different other arms and things and IRLs that come with being a journalist.
And so so as a journalist, are you working specifically just for yourself and your family right now? Or do you also have an outlet that you work as a producer or journalist outside of the home?
In this moment right now, it's literally just working for myself, self-funding everything as well as for my family. However, I mean, there's, you know how it is. There's things pending and on the table and different partnerships here and there, but you have to find the right partner and the right alignment to really be able to find, understand the work that you're doing and being able to amplify it. So in this moment, it's really full-blown entrepreneurship, real talk.
And
uh,
and it's complicated, right? Like
oh
you're
my God,
because you got this kid, you got this husband, and you have these dreams.
girl. And so, and I think too, and that's where faith steps in. I think it's like you said, you have a daughter, I have a husband, and yet there's still this big dream in your heart that you want to fulfill. And that's kind of where the faith steps in and says, I know that God's calling me to do this. I know that this is what I'm called to do, and He'll make a way. He will make a way out of no way. And this, as long as we continue to be obedient and step into that, and step and take one step at a time into our purpose and to fulfilling those things, I think entrepreneurship will feel a little bit more easier and at ease for people if we continue to cast the load on God and not ourselves.
And for so many people, it's something different. Some
Yeah.
people help people with their health. Some people help people with different products. And for you, you say that the greatest way to serve, which is what your business is to tell your story.
Yes. And that first of all, I love that you have that quote, because that is literally my mantra. And that is what I believe, is that in order for us to serve, we can serve through our vulnerability, through our transparency. Someone else's roadmap can be someone else's survival guide. And I think a lot of times we underestimate sharing our journeys with one another. We underestimate exposing the proclivities and the darkness that has brought us to the light. And so for me, I love that that is a part of the call and the gifting, and what I'm called to do is being able to pull out those stories, so that which in then will in turn lead to healing, lead to freedom, lead to wholeness. And so, yeah, I definitely believe that one of the greatest ways to serve is to truly tell your story. And so it's an honor to be able just to lead people through that journey as they continue to share from their heart.
And talk to us about what that means for you and what that means for your show. Because, I started this show because I think it's really important as mothers that you have
Yep.
multiple streams of income.
Yep.
Because sometimes you just cannot make it to your job. I had to quit my TV career for a bit because I had to homeschool my son, and it was very
Yeah.
stressful. And I think that
Mhm.
business and entrepreneurship is a wonderful way to protect yourself
Yeah.
from being broke. So,
Yeah.
so when you decided that your call was telling your story, how does that work from a business perspective? How did you get started with this?
Well, I started it in 2019. So, take you back a little bit. I was, like you said, working with my brother, and I transitioned out of there, and I felt this big internal longing for more. Like, I knew that I was called to something greater. But of course, it's scary to leave your job that is a 9 to 5, and your job that is that there's a consistent check that's coming in and day out. And that's why I go
Health
back to
insurance.
health insurance, all the things. And so that's why I go back to, like, entrepreneurship is not for the weak. And for me, it's just the only way I feel like I can make it through is obviously with my faith. But when I was working with him and I transitioned out, I went through this deep depression, this dark period in my life where I felt like my identity was so focused and wrapped in getting the paychecks, in the job that I was doing, that I felt this yearning and calling to start having these purposeful, meaningful conversations about what we go through just as individuals and entrepreneurs within ourselves. And that is where, when I birthed Now with Natalie, which became, I didn't know at the time, an entrepreneurship road, but for me, I was just walking into something. I was just kind of doing what I felt like I needed to do. And so from there is when my entrepreneurship career, if you will, started. And so, of course, you when you partner with different production companies or different communities or different networks, obviously resources are available to you, and some of those resources are able to pay for your production. Some of those resources are being able to pay for your bills. And it's just, you have to know that this is truly what you're called to do, because entrepreneurship is tricky and it's sticky and it's not for everybody. And I think that you have to really have tough skin and to know that whatever it is you're called to do, you just have to keep walking.
Do you remember a moment, like a big break or something, where you realized that maybe this was going to work? Because there's a lot of no's and then you get some yeses, or there's a lot of fails and then you get some wins.
I think when we shot season 1 of Now with Natalie and I started doing it, number one, I didn't really know that I was technically, there was a gift inside of me when it came to conversations. And I think that that was kind of indicative of me just being obedient and just kind of doing it. And so I think I knew that it worked because I was good at it. And then I knew that this was something that was like a big break because I was fulfilled after I was doing it. There was a fulfillment there. And then, as far as from a pragmatic standpoint, if this is actually just working, I was getting paid for my job. I was getting paid to do what I love to do. And so I think for me, it wasn't necessarily a moment, but I think it was overall when we were filming in the middle of season 1. And I was like, wait a minute, I love this. I love how this feels. I love what I'm being able to bring out of people, but also it's providing my needs. You know what I mean? Resources are being met and are being given, and things are being paid for. And so I don't want to necessarily say there was a moment, more so just in totality, it was like, okay. And then, of course, you have the moments where few years in, and you get the nose. You get the nose, and you constantly get the nose, and you're feeling like, well, wait a minute, I have already proved myself. Or have I not proven myself? And there's a quote that I've kind of always been relying on, that even recently, even as of to date, like in the last few months, it's like not allowing what those knows to dismantle the knowing that I know within me, to really continue to walk on this path, because I've gotten more no's than yeses. But then when I do get those yeses, it's like, okay, we're here, we are, we're still going, we're on the right path. But when those no's hits, I think you have to be able to find a way to allow those things to roll off and not allow it to become your identity.
I think that's so important. And in particular, even when you get hit with, huh, I thought this was going well, right? Like you were on the channel, had to change from there. You had a couple of seasons of Now with Natalie digitally, changed from there, but you kept pivoting. How did you keep going and how did you keep pivoting to keep your dream alive and to keep your goals going?
Once again, that inner knowing, you know what I mean? And I think that if we have that deep conviction, and if we have that knowing that this is something that we're called to do, regardless of the amount of closed doors, regardless of the people maybe not being able to see the value that you carry or the value that you bring, it just might not be the right door. It just might not be the right partnership. It just might not be the right production company. It might not be the right streaming platform. And God's timing supersedes all of our timings. However, that's easier said than done. And so I think for me, it's constantly being anchored in the conviction and the knowing that this is something that I'm called to do, and that there's a purpose being fulfilled. I can't do what you do, and you can't do what I do. what you're called to do is completely different than what I'm called to do. And so I think too, it was important for me to stop looking at other people's grass and put on those blinders and just say, you know what, my path is my path. What God has for me is for me. And as long as I continue to be active and not inactive in my steps, I will collide. And it might take a year, it might take 2 years, it might take a month, but I think the importance is that we keep moving. And even sometimes in the waiting, I feel like there's moments where in an entrepreneurship there's a lot of there's a lot of waiting. And so I think it's like going back to what you believe, what you're anchored in, and like, okay, God, I'm still waiting. What's really good? But then it's funny because there will be moments where he'll throw me a wrench, just a reminder. You're on the right path. Keep going. Even though you might not see it physically, even though you might not see it tangibly, but knowing that knowing inside of you has to be so concrete and that anchor that you sustain yourself in, because we will continue to get the no's. And literally I'm speaking to myself now because I've experienced it in the last few months where I'm like, wait a minute, the math ain't really mathing. However, I know what I know. And so you just got to keep moving forward.
I think that's so important. And knowing what you know, knowing your grass is your grass, someone else's grass, and admitting in these journeys when the math is not mathing is extremely important. What do you mean by that? And how is that acknowledgement changing your perspective on what you're doing with your business?
Yeah, I think what I mean by the math is not mathing is like knowing that you have a Rolodex of shows that you've done, you've proven yourself, like you've walked this journey, you knock on a door and you show, hey, this is what I've done, this is my resume. Would you be open or willing to maybe partner? And the door closes or it's a no. And so I think that's what I mean by the math is not mathing. Like, wait a minute, like you think that in moments you might be even overqualified for something, but I also think it's important to know that the math, it looks like the math is not mathing, but it really is mathing, because what's for you is for you, and whatever is for you will not pass you by. And I think that if we continue to keep that perspective, and granted in those moments as we're humans, we can feel like, wait a minute, I know the math ain't mathing, but it's like, let me go back to what I believe and know that I know that whatever is for me will not pass me by. And if I believe in that and I trust in that, then the math is mathing.
I think that's so important. Thank you for continuing with that, because I think people think, because I tell everyone the problem is what you just see, that is the final result of chaos and
Yeah,
tomfoolery behind the scenes. And you can't constantly post about the chaos and tomfoolery because then that kills the noise of the wins,
yeah,
right? From a business perspective. But the no's, the absurd no's, can be daunting and gaslighting sometimes. How do you, after thinking something is a sure thing or thinking that you did a killer presentation only to be told, absolutely not, actually, I'm so sorry, we're moving in a different direction. How do you regroup? Because I think we have such little time. We have so
yeah,
few opportunities
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
It can be difficult to pick up the pieces and try yet again.
yeah. I think it's important yes, there's one thing about things being at the right place at the right time. And like I said, again, God's timing. But I also think you have to sometimes look at yourself. Like, is there certain things that you need to personally work on? Is there certain things that you need to develop from your craft, from a journalistic perspective? Are there certain things that we might have not made clear or had clarity on in the deck that we presented? Or what can you do different? And I think it's important to realize that sometimes that closed door, yes, probably is not for you, and yes, there's something better for you, but also what can you do? And so for me, the way I regroup is, okay, let me let it sting. It stings a little bit, you know what I mean? Let's sit in it, but don't ruminate on it. Don't let's not like sit fully in it and allow it to really derail us from continuing to be active in our path. But I think for me, it is a motivation, because it's kind of like, okay, that I took that on the chin. Granted, though, I felt and knew that this might have been the right alignment, and having to really trust and know And going back in my quiet time, in my prayer time, and really like asking God for direction, like, where do you want me to knock? Who do you want me to continue to walk towards? And even though the doors that you knock on, you think that they are for you, it's okay to look within and say, okay, is there some evolution that I need to do personally to allow that door to open?
Like the evolution is a key aspect of any kind of successful business or any kind of successful businesswoman.
Yeah.
And it is hard but important. And you mentioned as you grow, as you get the hits, you take them as learning opportunities. And so one thing that's so hard is just to even get the ball started, right? Like how do you even
Yeah.
begin? What is your advice to someone who perhaps is in the chaos of motherhood who also wants to use their gift, their capacity to do something like what you do, to have their own show, to produce their own show, which is not an easy feat. And yours is that in like the production values. If you go to her website, and we'll all that information is going to be available there. It's absolutely stunning, right? That is not easy, and it is not cheap.
Mm-mm. Not easy and not cheap. You already know, Nancy. You already know. I think I think my advice would is just take the first step. Take the first step and don't think that the days that you plant the seed that you're going to see the harvest that night. I think, when we plant those seeds in our lives, whether it's you are a mom at home and you're an entrepreneur, and you want to take that first step, plant the seed, but give yourself time and grace for whatever that thing is that you planted to grow. I think that we live in a culture where we think that everything should just be uploaded and it just be this instant thing. But harvest takes time. And so understanding that it's a process when you plant those seeds and when you have to water them. And as a mom, whenever you plant those seeds, make sure you're going back and you're watering it. And so that kind of goes back to staying active, whatever that looks like. Continue to water it so that when the day is to come for your harvest to come, you will look back and say, I put in the work. And so my advice would take the step, and don't think that you're going to see it that night. You might, but allow yourself some grace and some time for whatever that seed is to evolve into your dream.
And sometimes motherhood means you have to take pauses. Like there's a big pause between season two of Now with Natalie and season three. And that was
Huge pause.
purposeful. It might have been a little difficult to get back up on the horse, but it was necessary.
It was hard, and I love that you brought that up, because even after we filmed season 2, and then I had May Jones, I went through bad postpartum depression. And so even with that, granted I took 7 months off, I had to take 7 months off. I was in such a cloud, in such a phase, but I think we have to realize that you're still in purpose. I think a lot of times we feel like it's a or, not an and. You know what I mean? Like I can either be a work, or I could be a full-time mom. No, it's actually an and not an or. And so I think when I took that time off with May Jones, one, it was necessary for me for my mental health, but two, it was purposeful. And I think a lot of times we can get so wrapped up in feeling like we're not doing what we need to be doing, as far as work wise, and so we're quote unquote wasting our time, or not fulfilling whatever we're supposed to be doing. But that time was so purpose filled, and understanding that that moment was just as imperative. That motherhood moment of just fully being home every day for 7 months was just as imperative as me going out and filming a show, if not more important.
Okay, so since having your daughter in the over 3 years that your life has totally changed, you now have a boss, but not in the professional sense, in the family sense, your daughter. How have things changed in terms of the interview opportunities you've given and the jobs you've taken and the shows that you've hosted? Is it different or is it the same as before you had
Great
a kid?
question. Same but different. And I think the same as far as like, now obviously because you do have a daughter, that's another responsibility. So scheduling is way different. The amount of time that I have is way different. The capacity that I have to prepare for an interview and to produce is way different. But the vision and the desire and the purpose is still the same. But I also probably noticed what's also different is being able to come from a different perspective when I am asking these questions to my guests, because I'm a mom now. And so motherhood opens up your lens to so many different things, and your perspective and your empathy and your compassion shifts, the purpose shifts. And so I think for me, it's made me a better journalist. It's made me a better conversationalist after having May Jones, because not only are things more intentional, but the time that you have is the time that you have. And I think it's also probably shift my focus and having things, because if I'm only allotting 2 hours here to focus on this, I only got 2 hours and I have to really be laser focused. And so I think it's changed for the better, even though it's different, and there's different responsibilities, because right after you're filming, you go off set, you go home and you're into wife mode and motherhood. And normally I'm like ruminating or thinking about the interview or this and that, but I got to get home to my other boss. So yeah.
It's just so funny because it's like you gotta get home to your other boss, and then sometimes somebody's sick and they need you, or somebody, and it's hard. One thing that is difficult in my experience is compartmentalization, right? It's just like
Mm,
it's very hard to be thinking about just being laser focused on business. Like you said, it's third in your hierarchy, but it is very important. And so
yeah.
have you seen your team expand since having children? Do you need more
Yes.
help
Yes.
professionally? Because I used to be a one man band,
Yes.
and you couldn't tell me anything.
Right.
And then once you have kids, you're like, I cannot do this by myself.
No, because your capacity shifts, and so you need more bodies, you need more brains, you need more creative partnerships and leaders to help you. And like you said, because and I do an okay job with compartmentalizing. It's like, okay, today is this, mother, like, she's at school, I can focus on this. But your capacity, I saw something the other day when there was a mom and she was on her phone, and it was a little bit of an Instagram reel, and it was also saying this mom is not just scrolling on Instagram or socials. This mom is preparing snacks, looking at the grocery list, trying to figure out when is the next doctor's appointment, when does she need her next shots, what are the play dates, what was the school email, what was the school calendar. And so it's all of those things. And so I definitely had to expand my team, because technically I have been a one-man band, but it's been helpful. Like, I mean, I have a producer, I have a creative director, but now I have a creative business partner. That's been such a helpful weight off my shoulders, because you know how it is. We can think about these conversations, and we're good storytellers, but you still need somebody to be able to bounce those things off and ideate with you. And I think after having Mae Jones, some of that capacity goes towards that other hierarchy that you explain, which I love the way that you explain that. And that's first, that's before work. And so it's like, after you get those things in order, then you can go to this. You understand that you probably don't have much left, but having to expand your team makes you feel like you have more capacity. So you're completely right.
How do you find your team?
Girl, when I say
Is there like a Walmart of team?
no, there's not. I mean, some of my team was from, like, my producer, my creative director was actually from my old show Now with Natalie, so they are staying on with me. Not old show, my old production with Hillsong. And then this other woman that has come along, we've been mutual friends, and she's seeing what I'm building, and she kind of just is like, look, I'm willing to come along. And so community, I guess, to answer your question. So it's not like you're just knocking on doors like, hey, but I think that is indicative of when you're continuing to step and build and put brick by brick, people will come along as they see your journey and the evolution of what you're building and want to be a part of it. And it was such a humbling thing that she was like, I want to come along. And I was like, you have no idea, you're an answered prayer. So yeah.
And at the same time, some people want to come along, some people don't want to climb. Michelle Obama says that. She's like,
Yep.
the people who want to join can join, and the people who don't, don't. That's
Yeah.
just this is how it is. Have you had to, because you have limited time now,
Yeah.
have there been business relationships that you've had to sever ties with, not because you don't love them, but because it's not working for you?
Yes, I did. I did. And it wasn't, I think too, when you become a mom, there's certain things that you just don't have tolerance for, and there's certain things that you can't necessarily say yes to anymore because it might interfere with, you know, marriage, motherhood, and understanding that if this isn't serving all areas of your life, then I might have to sever ties, you know what I mean? And so there was an instance probably maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and she was one, where I was like, you know what, this isn't serving me anymore and or the family. And so I definitely had to part ways, but and not with love, you know what I mean, with love, but it's just this inner knowing that you know that you have to abide by.
And it's probably oftentimes best for all involved. And it doesn't mean it's forever, it's just for now, in particular during these formative years of season three of Now with Natalie, as well as your 3-year-old going to preschool. This is a big
Yeah.
moment for you. There's no
Yeah.
coincidence that
No.
you, as soon as she goes to preschool, here we are in season three. It was no
Uh-huh.
coincidence for me that as soon as my children went back to school,
Yeah.
I could get back in these streets with things.
Yes.
What are you up to? Tell us about what we can look forward to with season three of Now with Natalie.
Yeah, so we're looking to launch, like I said, in fall. So 2024 September, we're looking to launch. And then I am doing some IRL movements and moments, which is we are hosting all of our IRL live conversations at Soho Works. And so we just did one about a month ago with Dr. Anita Phillips. And then we're looking to do another one. I can't really release who it's with yet, but you guys will see soon that we're doing that one in July as well. And so, yeah, just building, and things will, stay connected, and you guys, people will get insights and know when to start tapping back in and streaming back in. But I think too, I think the beauty of preparation is key. I think a lot of times we're so like focused on, let's go, let's get back out there, but understanding like the moment before the moment is probably just as important as that moment. And so I'm in the moment before the moment, but it's still active and building and with ease. But yeah, it's good.
The moment before the moment. How about the week before, the months before the moment?
Okay.
Because for every moment, it's just like our wonderful editor Jim. Shout out Jim. I always laugh because for every hour of content, it's what, like 4 hours to truly edit. It's really hard, and the actual moment is a drop in the bucket compared to the prep and the post.
Yes, and that's people don't really realize that content is not an easy feat. It's not something that is just uploaded and it's just great. It takes ideating, it takes creative conversations, it takes a lot of preparation and passion and really to know. I think for me too, the biggest thing and the way that I prepare in the moment before the moment is to look for the culture's need. Like, what do we need in this moment? What are we starving for? What is it that we are needing to be healed, be free, be whole? What are we looking for? And so I think that preparation on top of the technicality of the editing and the color correcting and the audio is a whole thing. And so it's I think it's important to shed a lot of light on the moments before the moments, because like you said, it's like it's uploaded, it's there, it's an hour, and then it lives, on the internet, which is a great thing, but really realizing that there's such a big foundation that has gotten us to that.
I love that. Uh, I can't believe our time is almost up, but I'd love to know if you have like a life or business mantra, words to live by. We already talked about one of them earlier, but is there another one that you think that you would like to leave listeners with?
Yeah, don't abort the process. Don't abort the process. Because I think a lot of times, like I said, we're looking to just jump to the next thing and don't realize that the process that we're going through is preparing us for the desires of our heart, and which is the self development, the self evolution, the they're really digging deep and knowing who you are. Because I think a lot of times we're so focused on that one thing, that dream, that goal, like let's just get there, but don't realize that that process that we're going through is going to help us to sustain that dream. And so I would just say, don't abort the process.
Aw. And in the process, like we said, there's ups and there's downs, there's pivots, there's everything, and there's also the future. And my
Yeah.
favorite segment on the show is called Mompreneurs Manifestation. And I ask
Mhm.
every guest what's next for you, or what you hope is next for you, and how we can help to manifest success for you in this endeavor.
Yeah, I think what's next for me is that, when we continue to launch our content in September, that it reaches who it needs to reach. It goes to the places and the eye gates and the ear gates of the people that need it, and that our content makes big impact. So that's my desire, is that my content and conversations make great, great, great impact.
And when you're looking at the impact that you want to make, talk to us about, you can't tell us specifics. What are some of the what are some of the takeaways that you hope everyone leaves watching your show with? Like hopefully when they've watched Now with Natalie, how do you want them to leave feeling?
Hopeful, restored, renewed, free, healed, whole, um, feeling like there's something to live for and live by, and that there is a silver lining in everything that we do.
I love it. Everyone's gonna want to watch this new season. Other seasons are already up. Tell us where everyone can find you and learn more about everything that you've been doing, currently doing, or about to do.
Sure. YouTube. So you guys can go on YouTube, Garden Media. Most of my stuff is there.
So
Hillsong Church.
garden meeting, get garden, like plant your garden.
Yes. So Garden Media, YouTube, as well as obviously my Instagram, Natalie Manuel Lee, and my Now with Natalie Instagram handle as well.
All right. Well, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Yes. Thank you so
You're
much
the
for having.
best. And I can't believe you're around the corner in LA.
Yes. Where are you? Yes. I was about to say, where
We'll
are you
talk
at? But we're not going to
offline,
tell
but
you.
yes.
Exactly.
All right, you heard her, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to Mompreneurs. And as a reminder, a brand new episode will go live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcasts.com to learn more. That's urban, the number one, podcasts.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.